There's this notion that Colorado head coach Deion Sanders is trying to win his son the Heisman and is going to do everything in his power to make sure that he's the star of the show. And I don't think that's it. I think he's just using his best player to his advantage.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And we all love free things. So make sure to like, subscribe, share, and tell your friend, tell your mom, tell your dog. I don't care. Tell someone about Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Coach Prime has frequently been accused by people who aren't familiar with the program of treating Colorado as some sort of trampoline for his sons. Obviously, his son, Shedeur Sanders, is the one in particular that most people kind of talk about in the sense that he's the quarterback. So he's the one that you're able to kind of build your team around. And while I think there's some validity to the sense that he's building his team around Shedeur, I do think that there is this notion that Deion Sanders only wants his son to succeed and is going to do everything in his power. That's why he hired Sean Lewis, so that way Shedeur Sanders would be able to throw the ball as much as possible. That's why he's going with Pat Shurmur now, because he wants Shedeur to throw the ball as much as possible. And people think that, because his son's the quarterback and a possible top pick of the NFL draft, he doesn't want to utilize the run game. And there was an anonymous coach that recently took a shot at Shedeur. No shock here. And he said he's an NFL guy, talking about Shedeur Sanders. Is he the first pick of the draft? I don't know, but I think he's a real dude. I think he throws it well. He's accurate. I think he's a first-round draft pick. And then this is the part where it reminds me of like a sandwich compliment, where it's like compliment, insult, compliment. So that was the sandwich part. That was the bread. And so he says, I think he throws well, accurate, first-round talent, whatever. And then he says, I think Deion's going to try to win Shedeur the Heisman. I think they'll be good. So obviously, he gets in that little, I think Deion's going to try to get him to win the Heisman. And then he says, I think they'll be good. They have good wideouts. Their O-line will be better. I think they'll be way better, and they'll have a good year. So there's like this compliment. Oh, yeah, I think Deion Sanders is going to do everything in his power to get his son the Heisman. Compliment. I think they're going to be good, though. It's like this weird thing where it's like, why do we have to like do the compliment sandwich? And realistically, it's not correct. Colorado didn't run the ball last season because they couldn't. I wish I could show you guys this graph. It's very helpful, but there's this fella on the name of Twitter, Stats of War is his Twitter name, and he has a lot of great analytics and metrics that he uses. And one of the metrics that he recently released, and a lot of people need to see it, sorry, a little microphone trouble there, is it was a metric measuring how many yards before contact. So you hand the ball off to your running back. How far do they make it before they're touched? How far do they make it before the defense line gets into the backfield? And while I don't remember exactly where they ranked, and it's a little chart, so there's just logos all over or it's a graph. So there's little logos all over the graph to represent each program. Colorado was one of the worst in the country. The defensive line, in summary, were getting to Colorado's running back well before they were getting to the line of scrimmage, meaning Dylan Edwards, Anthony Hankerson, Savion Wilkerson, all of which are no longer with the program. That's odd. Not odd, just something that just like clicked with me real quick. They all had to work to get past the line of scrimmage. Now, I'm not saying running backs in football don't have to work to get past the line of scrimmage. I'm well aware you don't just get an automatic 5 yards or whatever just for handing it off. But you would like to think that you could at least get to the line of scrimmage before the defense is touching you, not vice versa, where the defensive line is in the backfield and you're fighting just to get past the line of scrimmage. So Colorado had a horrendous offensive line. The running backs were kind of not a part of the system in that sense, because everyone knew that Colorado had to throw the ball. So if that's the case, why kind of throw them out there as like a little bait? Like they knew Colorado was throwing the ball. But people are going to say, well, he doesn't want to run the ball anyway. Well, let's take a look at his last season at Jackson State, because obviously Shedeur Sanders it was his second year as a starter, and we kind of knew, I think most people knew that Shedeur Sanders was a talented quarterback at the FCS level. And I mean, he still tore defenses apart and threw for godly amounts of yards and touchdowns. But let's look at, so this is Shedor's stats from Jackson State, his second year, so last season, or 2022 now. Threw for 40 touchdowns, 6 picks, and he had a 483 passing attempts. This past season, where Colorado had to throw the ball more, he had 430 passing attempts. Okay. Not to mention, at Jackson State, Savion Wilkerson was their leading rusher with nearly 230 carries. He almost had 1,200 yards of rushing, 5.1 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns on the season, 86 yards per game. Marshall Santee, I believe is how you say it, was the second leading back. He had 400 yards rushing, rushed for 30 yards a game. So they used a lot of running backs. And I think a lot of people are in this mindset where it's like daddy ball, where it's like, oh, he's just going to do what he has to do so that way Shedeur can pop off. And I'm like, I don't think that's the case. I really don't. And I think people need to understand that not everything comes down to like, this is for his kids. He doesn't care. Now, I'm not going to say that he doesn't want to see his son succeed, because obviously he's a father and every parent theoretically wants to see their son or daughter succeed. But I don't think he's like predicating this whole Colorado movement off of Shedeur. I think Deion Sanders, whether people want to admit it or not, he's primetime. He has pride. He has a name to uphold, even though he's an NFL Hall of Famer, even though he was a star on the baseball diamond, even though he was a beloved personality in the media. If he fails as a coach, people are going to remember that. And I don't say it will outweigh what he did as a player, but it will be something that people talk about. So people will look back at this and be like, yeah, Deion Sanders didn't work out and it was just horrible. You think he wants that on his resume? I think while he says he doesn't care what doubters say about him, I do think he cares about his legacy. And I don't think he wants his legacy tarnished by sort of crashing and burning at a Power 5 football program. So while I get why people may think that, this is like I guess this is the way that things go. I don't think that's the case for Colorado. I do think that also it is pretty smart to play to your team's strengths. And when your quarterback is one of the best in the country, playing to strengths is probably a really good idea. That's just my personal opinion. You guys, let me know what you think. Is it daddy ball? Is it whatever? Who knows? Who cares? We'll talk about it in the comments as we always do. When we come back, we're going to be talking about why there's a little bit of pressure on Shedeur and Travis Hunter and Deion Sanders, since they are so darn good. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Go check out the Denver Nuggets, Minnesota Timberwolves. Obviously, the Nuggets are back in the series. Is Nikola Jokic going to be able to fend off Anthony Edwards? Is Anthony Edwards going to have to carry his team? You guys can make that decision. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me a part of your day and making me your first listen of the day. We are talking about the latest rankings from On3 of the top 100 players in college football. And as you can imagine, Colorado had a couple of them. They did. They had a couple. It was a nice little, I disagree with the rankings, like where they're at. But so let me get to that point first. So ranked the top 100. Let's see who did it. His name is Nick Schultz, ranked the top 100. So best player in the country, James Pierce, Tennessee edge rusher. He had 13 sacks for Tennessee last season. Luther Burden, Missouri wide receiver, dynamic. You could use him any way you can. Sure. I'll agree with that. Kelvin Banks, offensive tackle. Sure. Carson Beck, the Georgia quarterback, is viewed as the best in the country. Will Campbell, offensive tackle LSU. Mason Graham, defensive lineman. At Michigan, Deion Walker, defense lineman, Kentucky, Will Johnson, Michigan, corner, Malachi Starks, Georgia, safety, and then it's Tetro McMillan, wide receiver at Arizona. That's the top 10. Quinn Ewers is 12. Then he has Jackson Dart at 13, the Ohio State cornerback. And then he has 1, 2, 3, I guess you could count, 3 receivers or corners ahead of Travis Hunter, 2 quarterbacks in Jackson Dart and 3 quarterbacks, ahead of Shedeur Sanders. And I disagree with the rankings. Travis is ranked as the 20th player in the country. I feel like at worst he's a top 10 player just for the impact. And I don't care where you put Shedeur realistically. I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the country. I know for a fact Jackson Dart's probably not better than him. So I disagree with those rankings. But that's neither here nor there. That's not the point of this segment. The point of this segment is to talk about why there's a little more pressure on Colorado this season. And this isn't me saying that they're not going to live up to these expectations, but they got some pressure. They got some expectations to live up to. And let me tell you why. Coach Prime is obviously in year 2 at Colorado. Coach 2 or 3 seasons, we'll call it, at Jackson State because they had that weird spring thing. And he did quite well. Went 4-3, 11-1, or 11-2, 12-1. Obviously, wasn't able to win the Cricket Celebration Bowl, but still got Jackson State to a very high level of football, brought a ton of attention to that program, and now he's bringing a ton of attention to Colorado. Colorado is headed to a Big 12 that is weaker than the Pac-12 was last year. There's a sort of built-in pressure in that sense, and there's also a built-in pressure, not because he's making these guarantees, but because there needs to be improvement. You change your coordinators, you change your offensive line, you bring in more defensive linemen, you bring in all these talents, and you have 2 top, I think Shedeur Sanders was 26, I said. Yeah, well, 2 top 30 players in college football, and they both have major impacts on the game. If Colorado isn't in a position to where they're at least playing for a bowl game, that is a horrible, horrible season, in my opinion. If they're in a position where because I think realistically they should be at a point where they could kind of push for the Big 12 title. Now, I'm not saying they'll win it, but I am saying towards the end of the season, we should see a little bit of like a path where it's like Deion Sanders and Colorado can win the Big 12 or make it to the Big 12 championship, if this happens. And so if Colorado isn't at that point and they're not in a point where they're making a bowl game, that's a huge disappointment. And then you kind of have to look at Deion Sanders and go, okay, if you couldn't do it with 2 of the best players in college football, how are you going to do it when you continuously have to rebuild this team every year in the transfer portal? So I think there's a lot of top 100 pressure on them for them being so good and having such high caliber players. They need their coaches to be on their P's and Q's. They need all of their players, their new additions, old additions, returning players from the previous regime. They all need to be on their P's and Q's. They need to be dotting their I's, crossing their T's, making sure that they win games that they're supposed to, and making sure that they're on the right end of these one-score games. Because obviously, and Shehan, when he was on the show, talked about this, the one-score game is very pivotal in college football because there's always games where it's like, yeah, that was really crazy, and it could have gone either way. And sometimes you're just not the team that's on the right side of them. And that comes down to sort of not coaching flaws, but maybe strategy or game management or penalties, discipline, whatever it may be. So if you're Colorado, you need to show some improvement. Otherwise, if there's no improvement with as talented as a roster as this is, because I think this is one of the more talented rosters in the Big 12 from top to bottom, talent-wise. Like I do think it's very talented, but are they going to be good and put it all together? That's where the pressure comes in. And that's where I think all the pressure builds up for Coach Prime and company. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the college football cover one more time. Travis Hunter is one of the 3 athletes on it. And I just want to tell you guys everything that I took away from this, what it means for the program, and why you should be excited for the upcoming college football video game. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. First of all, before we move on, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. We're talking about the cover. It is a sight to behold. Realistically, I think it is the coolest thing ever that Travis Hunter is featured on it because, one, there's this sort of aura around the game. It's arguably the most important sports video game in history right now because obviously we had a hiatus. They made the last game in 2013. Denard Robinson was on the cover. Now, and I'm going to put the cover up here on the show. I'm going to share it with you guys via Twitter, like my Twitter screen or whatever. The cover is just glorious. I think a lot of people it's drawn mixed reviews. I think a lot of people just like to hate. You can't please everyone. I think a lot of people were sort of expecting a lot, and I don't know why they don't like this, but this is what it looks like. Let me enlarge my screen here for those of you that are able to see it. There's the cover right there. As you can see, Travis Hunter front and center with Quinn Ewers on his left, Donovan Edwards on his right. And so there's a lot of people that, as you can see, the very first comment under my little, it's not me, it's the person below me, says L. So not everybody loves it. But if you're Travis Hunter, one, you kind of made history in a sense. It's like this is a part of video game history. This is a part of college football history. Players unionized back in the day because they wanted to be compensated for this game. Now, guys like Travis Hunter, Quinn Ewers, Donovan Edwards, Quinshon Judkins, Carson Beck, Jalen Milroe, they're going to be able to profit off their NIL being used. These guys are going to continue to pave the way for athletes for years to come. And realistically, this is a selling point for Colorado. And I know I talked about this frequently, but I just want people to understand how big of a deal this is for Colorado, because I think I saw, let's see, how many cover athletes? I think there's only 14 schools in college football that have had a cover athlete of the game. So, and it's not really like it's not something to take lightly. I think it was like 14, 15. Let's just call it an even 20. Say there's 20 cover athletes, right? Which there hasn't been. There's 100, and a lot of them, I think, like Texas has had 3 or 4 different cover athletes. I know Michigan has had multiple cover athletes. We'll say 20 different schools have had a cover athlete. We'll just pretend that's the number. There's 134 FBS programs. So if you do 20 divided by 134, only, let's see, 14% of college football programs have had a cover athlete. And so for Colorado, who's in the middle of a huge rebuild, who went 4-8 last season, who a lot of people hate on them, a lot of people doubt them, a lot of people are thinking, why would they matter? Like, no one cares about Colorado. For Colorado to be one of those programs, that's a big darn deal. And if you're Coach Prime, you got to sell this. You got to be like, hey, we're getting you maximum exposure. If you come here and you ball out, you'll get all the NIL deals in the world that you want. You just have to come here. You have to deliver. You have to perform. So I thought that's really cool. I think that's a really big selling point for Colorado, and I think it should be moving forward. In terms of the game itself, realistically, I'm going to tell you guys everything you need to know about the game. It releases on July 19th, which is coming up, May, June, July. It's almost 2 months, 3 days. So on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, on 3 days or a month from Sunday, or 2 months from Sunday, excuse me, it'll be coming out. You could pre-order it. You could do different features. It sounds like Travis is already planning on streaming the game. He talked about a little with Quinn Ewers. He wants to do an online dynasty with the Texas quarterback and kind of talk about, or they want to dominate these guys and they want to team up and play against people online so that way they could clown people and have some fun and make some content. Travis knows what he's doing. He knows how to market himself. He knows how to maximize his brand, which I think is part of the Coach Prime teachings. But again, really cool deal. If you guys want to do like an online dynasty or league or something, we can maybe get that going in the comment section. We could get the Locked On Buffs dynasty going. You guys could play against one another, play against me. I'll give you guys the work. Don't you guys worry. But I think we could do something really fun with this. I think it'll be an awesome experience. And I just want to say I appreciate all of the support that you guys give me. So that way I can keep covering everything around Colorado and keep you guys updated every single day, making me your first listen of your day. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow. I'm trying to get to 6,000 subscribers before the season starts. That's the goal. It's a lofty goal, I know, but we're going to shoot for it. We're currently at 5,200. So I need 800 more. Make sure to like, share this with a friend, share this with your mom, share this with your dog. I don't care. I just hope that you guys enjoy, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. See you guys on Friday.